Where I first met palm trees was when I. Shauna, good morning. Good morning. Um, so Facebook is trying to. Okay, I'm not sure what you mean there. Co.e up. Okay. Good morning, Debbie. Good morning, Mary. All right. So this morning, good morning, Bishop Flint. I don't often go here, and I'm not apologizing for going here this morning. In my devotional time this morning, I laid my devotional material down. I got up quite early, and then I picked in this book. It came out in 2017. It's called Redefining Truth by David Fiorazo. And he wrote another book earlier. Let me see if I can find the name of that earlier book. And I had it right on the tip of my tongue. It's actually a book that I had picked up earlier, and I thought I had marked the title of that book. I'll find it. I'll find it later, maybe, and mention it to you. But you can Google him and find material on him. And I thought right here in the early part he mentioned his first book. This one is called Delusions of Replacing God and Calling Evil Good. I'm just going to draw from his book this morning and just talk a little bit about the culture war in 2020 and what is at stake. Christian Mingle, according to David, did a poll, and they asked this question: would you have sex before marriage? This is Christian Mingle. I think another website called JDate was involved in it as well. Here's what the answer was. 87% said yes. Would you have sex before marriage? 87%. Christian Mingle. Only 13% said no. Now, 19% said I would have to be in love, and 5% said I would have to be engaged. You may remember the flap over Ashley Madison, the dating site with 31 million people. The mantra of the site was "Life is short, have an affair," and somebody hacked the site. Do you remember that? And when they hacked it, released the names of all of these people who were cheating on their spouses. Hundreds of thousands of new users signed up. They hadn't heard about the site. They signed up. Almost 100,000 of them were women. 31 million users. Among those that were exposed, 400 were prominent pastors, bishops, religious leaders, deacons, elders, church members, and so forth. Thousands of marriages were ruined. Lives were wrecked. This is where we are as a culture. In the 1970s, there was a in the 50s and 60s there was a group in Hollywood that went through the scripts of television shows and so forth and advised against that appearance, and you remember the twin beds of married couples on Lucy and other places. They weren't seen in the same bed together. Language wasn't used. 4-letter words of any kind weren't used. That censorship committee or that advisory committee went away. And so in the late 60s and early 70s, you have this bursting forth of all kind of profanity and everything. The gate is unlocked. Then you have a new censorship. And the new censorship is you must have that language and you must present a view of open marriage and a positive view of homosexuality. And now every year Hollywood honors get support from corporations, from the media. Everybody is lined up on that side of the equation. And yet here's the collusion that's taking place. It's the collusion of the influence of Margaret Sanger, who was a eugenist and a racist. Her Planned Parenthood abortion clinics were placed in black neighborhoods to eliminate or to lower black populations. She is a sexual liberation crusader. No barriers. She promoted adultery, and this is, of course, the other side of the abortion issue. You have John Dewey coming forth in the 20s, and you have education moving to a humanistic based, literally to a socialistic based, away from the original foundation of American schools. A, in Adam's fall, we've sinned all. B, heaven to find, the Bible mind. C, Christ crucified for sinners died. The Bible as the primary textbook of the school. And this shift is now radically in place. It's taken us 100, it's radically in place. And not only does it not make a place for God and the Bible, it is hostile to any kind of faith. And then you get in the 50s, Alfred Kinsey, and he comes out with all these studies on sexuality, and you may have studied some of these in school. Those studies were skewed. Those studies were falsified to promote his very animalistic, unrestrained expression of sexuality as being legitimate. And every one of these is tied back to the idea of evolution. Every one of these rejects God as creator. Every one of these rejects biblical truth, and they rise out of Marxism, and they rise out of Darwinism, and they rise out of the humanistic thinkers of the Enlightenment period. Now, I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you, but we've never had to battle this as entrenched political ideology and as law. And now we're battling this as law. And here's the great problem. Is now on this footing. 59% of practicing Christians believe that moral truth only 59% of practicing Christians believe that moral truth is absolute. So 41% believe that it is relative. 76% of Christians at best believe that finding your own way, looking within yourself, is the way to go. It's not biblical. It's not objective truth. It's this idea of inner light, which is the essence of the New Age. This is what Christians believe. 40% of practicing Christians in America say that any kind of sexual expression between two consenting adults is acceptable. 69% of Americans believe that. And by the way, 91% of Americans believe the way to find truth is looking within yourself. 67% of Christians believe the highest goal in life is to enjoy life as much as possible. That 84% of Americans believe that. Now, what does the Bible teach? The highest goal in life is to worship God and serve Him in a way that glorifies His name. That in God's purpose for my life, I find the greatest fulfillment. That in trusting God and not going my own way, which is the essence of sin. Independence, rebellion is going my own way. So here's what you have firmly entrenched in the culture and growing in Christian circles. You have pleasure-based hedonism, do whatever feels right. You have unbridled no boundaries, sexual expression and liberation. You have narcissism, self-preoccupation, look inside myself, and you have moral relativism, no rules, no laws. This has taken over the culture, and it has taken over large segments of the church. So what if there were no consequences for what you believe and for what consequences? And let's ask the question in a little different way. So there are no rules. Is there anything wrong, sir, with any action whatsoever? Is there any action that would be wrong, in your opinion? If so, why? And on what basis do you base your why? Then if your why and his why disagree, then there is nothing really wrong. Now we are at pure animalistic behavior, which is the bottom line, the lowest place that evolution brings us to. Make no mistake about it. The battle that we are in is a battle to abolish Christianity, to push it out of the context. And the gay rights movement is all about the total abolishment of any kind of moral standard or any kind of moral restraint or any kind of moral definition that says that behavior is wrong, that behavior is sin, or God has a right to tell me how to behave. There are a few sane people left. The American College of Pediatrics has recently urged legislators, educators, and health professionals to reject the idea of giving chemical treatments and surgical offerings to children to, I love their language, impersonate the opposite sex. They say facts, not ideology, should determine reality. They go on and say that human sexuality is an objective biological binary trait. It is XY or XX, and those are the genetic markers of male and female. They are not genetic markers of disorder. Now, this is completely politically incorrect. They are standing on the wrong side of the fence in terms of the culture. And they're going to get incredible heat for saying this kind of thing, and they may ultimately cave, just like the American Psychiatric Association did way back in 1971 and 1972 when gay rights activists stormed their convention and demanded that they would never have another peaceful convention if they did not change homosexuality out in diagnostic DSM-3, I think it was at that time, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is the Bible for psychiatrists. If they did not change that from abnormal, if they did not normalize that behavior, and not on the basis of science, not on the basis of genuine psychiatry or psychological studies, bending to the pressure of activists who are throwing chairs around in the convention, bending to them, they made the change. And so I want you to see, and you've seen it in the streets, this connection between Black Lives Matter and violence, this connection between homosexuality and violence, this connection between the kingdom of darkness and violence. The American Pediatric Association says that everyone is born with a biological sex, and that a healthy biological boy and a healthy biological girl believes that he is a boy, or believes that he is or that she is a girl. The objective psychological problem exists in the mind, not in the body. They go on to say puberty is not a disease, and it should not be treated by by puberty blocking hormones. 98% of boys that have some confusion, and 88% of girls that have some so-called gender confusion, accept their biological sex on the other side of puberty if they're affirmed. If their biology is affirmed on the other side, but if they are given, as now is becoming more and more common, puberty blockers as young as 11 or earlier, that will require cross-sex hormones for the rest of their life. And the association says they will go on impersonating the opposite sex for the rest of their life. And what is not being told publicly is that these changes come with dangerous health risk. Cardiac disease, cardiac arrest, high blood pressure, blood clots, stroke, diabetes, and even cancer, and the rates of suicide among those who take this liberating leap. Community and much of the media and much of Hollywood and much of Washington's political elites, those who take this leap, are 20 times more likely to commit suicide. Now, the response is, oh, that's only because of the pressure. That's only because we've not normalized it. That's only because we've not affirmed them. Nonsense. Nonsense. In fact, I think we have to argue the LGBTQ community is indifferent and callous to this problem, because for them it's all about power. It's about obliterating Christian influence. It's about hedonism. It's about self-definition. It's about moral relativism. It's about anything that goes. Let me read you a story. Again, I'm quoting here, I'm drawing heavily from David Fiorazi in his book, Redefining Truth. In my mid-20s, see, I'm in my mid-20s that I'm quoting now. I transitioned in my teens, and I had biological surgery, and I was too young to make such a decision. And now I've sunken into deep regret. I don't feel transgender anymore. I feel like my old self. I was brainwashed. I was brainwashed by the transgender agenda. I would do anything to have my body back like it was. I'm a guy, and I was in touch with a feminine side. I can't believe what I've done now to my life. I have no choice but to take these hormones forever. At times I feel like I am losing my mind. In fact, psychiatrist Richard Garotti said, this whole movement is a contagion of mass delusion. Here's another quote. I was a cross-dressing boy at the age of 9, and after years of pain and self-delusion, my cross-dressing stopped decades later when I realized this is pure fantasy. It felt fun, it felt zany, it felt exhilarating that I could believe that I was born after decades, the confusion persisted. And then I came to understand, listen to this, that my grandmother's actions of cross-dressing me constituted emotional child abuse. And that psychological harm grew as the years went by. Now let me tell you what we're up against. All of that, if you've stayed with me, all of that is at stake. That I don't know if you get the feeling, that's kind of been pushed back in the last 4 years. And here's why. Because we've had a president that is a firewall, whatever you think of him, on the morality issue, on traditional values. In 2014, the previous president, President Obama, in the Medicare policy, mandated that it had to cover sex reassignment surgery. His Justice Department added gender identity under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now, that is a broad reach to put gender or what I think my gender is, not biological gender or sex, but gender, and equate it with race. That was a huge leap forward. in his State of the Union address just 4 years ago in 2016, I remind you, he became an advocate for those who were lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. The first time it was mentioned in a State of the Union address, and he's talking about free speech, their right to advocate for their position. But here's where that advocacy goes. Harvard University, their registration now includes not only he, she, male, female, but Z, her, H-I-R, hers, H-I-R-S, they, plural, them, plural, theirs. Identify yourself. In fact, the Obama administration 4 years ago offered federal funding for transgender genital reconstruction operations under the Affordable Care Act and forced doctors would have been forced to, I don't know where that stands legally now, to perform these surgeries. Facebook says there are 60 genders, not male, female, 60 genders. And YouTube, Snapchat, Twitter, all of them follows. And all of the media outlets have jumped on this ban. This is what we're facing. Not just the right, but the forced, these forced values upon the church. You think they'll stop at the church door? Absolutely not. Canada has already passed laws that just to not use the pronoun that somebody else wants you to use to affirm them in their gender orientation could result in as much as a $250,000 fine. All over the nation. You see 1975, you see Minneapolis. That's a long time ago. This has been coming for a while. We've been silent. I know that the name of David's other book is The Cost of Our Silence. We've been silent. And now we've been silent too long, and we can't be silent anymore. We're not only about to lose the nation. This is not about imposing our values. This is now about retaining the right to articulate our values and live our values in our own home. Minneapolis City Council passes a law prohibiting discrimination on the basis of transgender. 1975. So this is 45 years ago. You may remember in 1977, Richard Raskin lobbied for the right to play. He's a man, having had a cross-gender surgery and made himself into a woman, him inside, thinking he could win more. He now regrets it. But the tennis organization allowed him to do that crossover. 1987, the American Psychiatric Association caved in on the gender identity issue, removing it from the DSM status of a mental disorder. I mean, I could go on with all kinds of things that have been happening to us. This starts all the way back, It goes back to Dewey. It goes back to Sanger. It goes all the way back to 100 years when we have been silent and we have not spoken out. Nancy Pelosi said we had a four-legged stool. We wanted an inclusive hate crimes bill that would include anyone who took a position not just on the basis of traditional race, but on the basis of gender. They could be sued. They could be sued on the basis of that position, whether it's failing to bake a wedding cake or do a venue or to sign a wedding or to sign a marriage certificate. They could be sued. You must act with the new morality, or we'll sue you. We'll take your children away. We'll put you in jail. And she goes on to say, this is Pelosi, Obama, and Reid. We flipped the courts. We've redefined the language. We frame the debate in a way that is difficult for anyone to speak against this. They repeal the don't ask, don't tell, meaning they're promoting an openly homosexual climate or culture in the in the military. Gallup, in the middle of all this, did a poll, and here's the question they asked: what is the gay population in America? Young people and women said 30%. 30% of all Americans are gay. Incredible. Incredible. Even older people. What's the transgender latest battle for our nation? The White House agenda.